All right, and I'm going to share my screen. Maybe. Okay. So you should be seeing the USPS demo. If not, please yell at me. And if you have any questions, by all means, speak up. You can throw it in the chat. Rhonda's on. She'll monitor the chat and she'll yell at me if there's a question to answer. And you guys are in luck. I took notes and I'm prepared for today. I'm not winging it like I normally do. All right. The first thing I want to talk about is terminating an employee, which seems so minor, and it's not really, but there's a couple of items that we see people miss a lot, and then it causes not major issues, but it causes weird things to happen later on. So I have created a little guide. It's kind of a checklist, not really a guide, just a checklist. Like, did you do all of these things that you can kind of walk through? So I'm going to go over this and then I'm going to talk about a few things, why you should do it and why you maybe should not. First and foremost, when somebody's leaving, if you have to process an NC1 payment, please do it before their last pay. I stuck it right there at number 1 in your face. Don't forget. That, if you've ever had to do that after the fact, it's not impossible and it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's also not super easy. Just processing it on their payroll is the best. When they leave, you want to go to the employee screen and you want to enter a termination date under the dates section. And I'll just pop in there real fast and show you. Brent Hurst, we're going to see him a lot today. So it's on the employee screen and then it's just down here, termination date. Just go ahead and put that in there.
Tanya, could you increase the size of your screen a little bit?
Yes, I can. I forget to do that. Is that a little bit better?
That's better, thanks.
Okay. All right, so termination date. Entering that termination date on the employee screen will not prevent that employee from being paid, just as FYI. On the position screen, there's a couple of fields there that you want to update. The job status is the big one, but you don't want to change that until after they've received their final pay. Because changing it from an active status to any of these other statuses will prevent them from pulling into the payroll. So this is once they've been paid out, you want to go in and change them to inactive, deceased, terminated, whatever works. The biggest reason we tell you to do that is because a lot of times when we're running reports, we will filter for an active job status. So, when people are wanting, who's all my active people, and, we filter by that status a lot. So I've seen a lot of people have coaches or subs or maybe EMIS only screens that are set up as active. And it's not the end of the world, but, it causes your report to have some stuff on there that maybe you don't want. So updating that job status will help you in the long run. Just do it after the final pay. You want to enter a stop date and a termination date. Again, these two items won't prevent the person from getting pulled into payroll, only the inactive status will. So you can enter that information in there. And then separation date and separation reason under the EMIS related information. As soon as you know they're leaving and what that reason is, you can put that in there. That way you can go ahead and start getting reported to EMIS. Sometimes you need to change the position status. That's a little deeper conversation that I won't get into today, but it depends on the EMIS, where the point in time in which they're leaving and where you're at in EMIS. So sometimes you need to change the status and sometimes you don't. We have an EMIS separation scenarios that's on our website that you could view that kind of walks you through each different case. So just viewing the position screen where all those things are. Make that. You've got your termination date and your stop date. And then these are used for various things. Some of these are used for EMIS reporting. So that's why we say just put both of them in there. And then under the EMIS related information, that's where you've got your separation reason and your separation date. And if you need to, update the position status to maybe it needs to be a U. Again, that's EMIS related information. I'll actually show you if I can open up another. Sorry, I got this little bar in front of me that causes me problems. I can't see things. On our website, if you go to Finance and State Software Redesign, under USPSR, we do have EMIS reporting scenarios. This is an awesome little cheat sheet that kind of walks you through when you would change the status and when you wouldn't.
And you've updated this very recently based on David Downs' presentation on EMIS recently, haven't you?
Yep, we added a scenario 5 because that was new to us, which is very, very scenario to scenario 4. It's kind of for those people that maybe have been reporting to EMIS for 4 or 5 years and shouldn't be anymore. But this EMIS separation scenarios, it's been out for a long time, and I loved it. I mean, I pulled it out every time somebody left, like, okay, what do I got to do here? So yeah, it is recently updated for FY23. So that's on our website. So you don't always have to change that position status. It just depends on when they're leaving. But those are the fields you need to change on the position screen. I'm trying really hard here to get back to this. Okay. On the compensation screen, you would want to enter a stop date for the contract. Again, that one's a little, you got to make sure that it still pulls into your payroll for one last time, or how many, until you're done paying them out or whatever. This one right here is a big one, the calendar stop date, and it gets missed very frequently. So on the compensation screen, you have your compensation stop date that you would want to update. But then way down here under this historical context, you have a calendar stop date. And people miss it a lot. And what happens is when you don't enter a date there, they continue to get pulled into your ODJFS report. And then it's been 3 months and you're like, why is this person still on here? They didn't work at all. Well, because they didn't have a calendar stop date, but they have a calendar that has days on it. So as far as ODJFS is concerned, you're still reporting days. So if you've ever had to go in and do core adjustments to reduce the weeks for an employee, go check their calendar stop date. I would make it a habit if somebody leaves to put a calendar stop date on all of their compensations, like all of their that are out here. If they have a calendar that is like a default, a blank calendar, it's not necessary, but it might just be a good habit to put a calendar stop date on everything. So those are the two big fields under compensation. Oh, no, wrong one. All right, your payroll items. This one, everybody does a little bit different. I say put a stop date on the voluntary payroll items. So any type of insurance, 403B, anything that's voluntary. I never use stop dates on any of the taxes or Medicare or SERS or STRS. Just because if they ever come back to work for you, because we all know that happens a lot, you may forget to remove that stop date and then they don't have that withholding. But if it's your practice to put in those stop dates and you're used to that, that's fine. It's just something that I always found maybe isn't the best practice, because people come back and they're like, oh, I didn't take off the stop date on their federal taxes and now they don't have any withheld, and nobody likes that. that's obviously your decision, not mine, just a food for thought. Um, if they are going to another district and they ask you to transfer their sick leave, you want to go ahead and remove their sick leave from your record since you are sending it to another district. And you do that under the leaves tab under accumulations. So I'll just show you that real fast. So you would go to leaves. It's weird. You got to go to accumulations and then you do a negative accumulator. So create. Does he even have any sick leave? There, yeah. So sick leave, and I'm going to do a negative. I know he's got more than that, but a negative 50. And you can put a description, which I love this about redesign. You can say transferred to wherever. Transferred to NR. So that way you know. So that's how you remove the sick leave. You don't you would not want to go into attendance and post an attendance of 50 days or anything like that. So it's under leaves and then you got to click on the accumulation tab. You'll want to, if you can, do it before the next step. So the next step is removing their eligibility flags from the position screen. Sometimes you don't know. Sometimes they don't ask you to transfer the sick leave until September, October, and you've already, removed their eligibility flags. If that happens, if you try to do a negative accumulator, I believe it'll error out and say this person isn't eligible for sick leave. So you'd have to go back to their position and check their sick leave flag and then do a negative accumulator. What I've seen people do is they don't uncheck these eligibility flags, they leave them flagged. And their method for ensuring that they don't get any accumulations is to go into leaves and they will update their accumulator to be 0. Well, I guess that works, but what happens is because that person's still eligible for a sick leave, every time you do your accumulation, that person will be on your report. It'll be a 0 amount, but they're still on the report, making your report longer than really necessary. So my suggestion is to uncheck their flags. And you want to make sure you uncheck their flags on every position. Most of the time they only have it checked on one, but things happen. You forget to uncheck it on their old jobs or something. So uncheck those flags. And then last, you don't want to archive the employee position or compensation until EMIS is done reporting. And depending, again, this is back to those EMIS scenarios. Sometimes you've got to leave those out there and unarchived for a whole nother year, depending on when you find out they were leaving. So that just depends on when they're leaving. Most people don't archive the employees for a while anyways, or the position. Honestly, sometimes when people leave, they don't even archive the compensation. There's just a note if an employee is terminating at the end of the school year, but is still going to be paid on stretch pay through the end of August. You can enter all of your stop dates and termination dates, but you don't want to change the stop date on the compensation screen. You want to leave that intact so it'll continue paying, and you also don't want to make their job status inactive until after they've been paid out. But you can enter that calendar stop date on the compensation screen. It'll still continue to pay them. Okay. Any questions about a terminating employee? That was a topic that was requested to review. And I will send these, anything that we review, any of these documents, I'll send those out later today as well. So you can use this as, create your own little checklist if you want. Okay. I will move on to the next. The next thing is the SERS adjustment file. I have a love-hate relationship with this. If you used Classic, then you know if there was an adjustment file, it got created at the same time as your regular file, as your regular SERS file. Redesign does not do that, which is okay. We just have to get used to that. So you're in SERS reporting per pay report. This has changed recently. There used to be a little checkbox to do an adjustment only file, but now you have this box right here that says generate adjustment only submission file. And then there's this crazy note. Adjustment submission file may be needed. So your question is, how the heck do I know if I need an adjustment file? Right? Yeah, that was my question too. And in my research for this, I found out how we figure that out. So, all right. So some things that cause you to need to do an adjustment file. Avoided check. So you paid Jane Smith and then you had to void her check. So maybe you voided it a week later and you want to submit that voided check with your next SERS per pay report. We'll review that. So that's one thing that can cause it. A retro payment. In my testing, let me review my notes. If you entered the retro on their compensation screen, so, nope, hang on. Nope. So somebody, two pays into the contract year, you had to do a retro pay. If you put in a retro on this screen, in my testing, I have found that that causes a need for an adjustment file. If you enter it in payroll current, well, here, maybe it'll let me show you in future. And I absolutely could be like wrong on this, but in my testing, this is how it played out. So if you entered a retro here, when I tested this out, it didn't cause an adjustment file. I don't know. Maybe it depends on the situation, but we're going to talk about how you can find it anyways. And docked wages will sometimes cause an adjustment file. However, this only happens if the employee is being paid strictly from accrued wages. And we'll take a look at that, what that means. So let's go back to the voided check. So if you have a voided check, you will absolutely need to create an adjustment file. And you do that. So in your SERS reporting, you're in here, you've got your payroll you want to report. You also want to do your voided check. Well, all the way down here, kind of hidden, you have to scroll. These are your voided payroll payments right here. Okay, it's defaulted to be true. So you come down here like, oh, yep, here's the employee that I just voided. I want to include this in this reporting to SERS. So you check the box. Now here's the tricky thing. When I generate this submission, or generate this report, it's going to show, see if I can get it to do it. Oh, well. I'm guessing on my dates, I can't remember. There she is.
There it is, the 51.
Yep. So she's showing up on my report, right? So all I did was I entered my information for my payroll, I checked the box, and she shows up on, when I click the generate report, she's on my PDF report. Okay, so there's her negative $760 from 2010. I'm a little late there. So you may look at this and be like, oh, everything's great. However, this is where it gets you. When you generate the submission file, here's the submission file. Well, she's not on there. That's not helpful. A lot of times people don't find out that they need this adjustment file because nobody ever looks at this. It's this weird TXT file. You just upload it to SERS. You've looked at your PDF report and it looked good. A lot of times you upload it to SERS and you don't balance anymore and you're like, what the heck happened? So that's when you've got to create this adjustment file. Okay, so back to that question. How do I know? Well, this earnings code that starts with a 5 right here, that's what tells you there's an adjustment file needed. And I have noted that right here. Adjustments will be noted on the SERS per pay report by an earning code that begins with the number 5. So you run your SERS report, you're looking at it, and you scroll down through all of the earnings code, and you're like, oh, I got a 5 here. Go ahead and make yourself a note. I have an adjustment file I need to run. That's how you know. Honestly, I did not know that until I did research for this training today. So thanks for making me learn, guys. Okay, so that is the voided check. Another note about the voided check, once you have created everything, so I generated my submission file, and now if I generate my adjustment only file, open up this TXT file, look, there she is. There's Janet with her negative $760. Both of those files get uploaded to eSERS. This file creates a like a credit memo that you would then apply to your payment. So once you've done it, if it's a voided check situation, once you've created all of your files, you want to go back down here and uncheck this box, because I'm going to leave the screen and then I'm going to come back into it. Oh, it doesn't do it anymore. Good. It used to keep the box checked. And so the next time you come in here to run your report, you're like, why is this off? I don't understand. It's because this box was checked. Maybe they've updated that recently. So good to know. Okay. The retro payment, we kind of talked about that one a little bit already. Again, looking for that 5 with the earning code that starts with 5. So docked wages. So most of you probably dock people on a regular basis. I know I always did. If they are paid from, and I have an example here, let me find it. And this one's a little hard to see, so I'm going to zoom in really far here. So if they have, this is a pay report, if they have regular wages and accrued wages, and I apologize, I can't really highlight anything, and docked wages, it will not cause an adjustment file. So this is the pay report. This down here is the accompanying SERS report. You can see it lumped everything together into an O1 earning code, which is regular wages. So if they have regular wages and accrued wages and you dock them, you're good. What sometimes happens is you get to the end of the year and they've worked all of their days, but I know some of our districts, you pay current, but your exception pay is like 2 weeks in arrears. So sometimes you're docking for hours for days that are in a previous payroll. That's when you come into this situation where they're only being paid from accrued wages, and then you dock them. That creates a 51, an adjustment file. So this down here is your per pay report. So if you were reviewing it, you would say, oh, here's my 5. I got an adjustment file I need to create. So again,
And
docking, go ahead.
this is most common, you'd probably say in June, because you'd find about this maybe, June after the fact, and then they'd only be paying out of accrued wages, but then you'd have to apply the dock. Is that right?
Yeah. So I think
Okay.
this is a good example. So the district I stole this from because they love me. Their payroll dates were June 1st through the 15th. Okay, you can see that down here. But they're docking them from clear back in May because their exception, so their timesheets are on a 2-week lag, so to speak. So they found out after they ran their payroll, oh, this person, didn't work all of their hours. I got to dock them. That created an adjustment because they were paid. So the system looks at it and it says, they're all accrued wages. You can't have a dock when it's all accrued wages. That's what the system thinks. Whereas up here, they're like, okay, you've got regular wages. We're docking some of those regular wages. We'll lump it all together. So a little weird, I know, but that's ultimately looking for that 5 on your per pay report is what's going to clue you in that you need to run an adjustment file. Is that making sense to everyone? You can't nod. I can't see you.
Yeah, and for the 50, there's 51, 52, 53, and 54.
Yep, and I'll
51
tell
is for
you.
regular.
Yep,
Yeah,
so
you
if you
got
go
that
out
coming up?
to, hang on, the SSDT wiki that I love, and you go to reports and SERS reporting, and then I want the per pay report. If you actually scroll through here, you will get, sorry for the scrolling, right here. Here's all of your different earning codes and what they mean. So a 51 is a regular adjustment, a 52 is a supplemental, 53, that's where you get that retro, and then 54 is a stretch adjustment. I think the 51 is probably the most common. But another thing I guess I should bring up is these codes, once they're on here, you cannot change them. So if you run your SERS report and you're like, oh man, that's not supposed to be in 03 or whatever, 03 or maybe an O2 for supplemental. You can't change it. The only way to change it is to upload it to SERS and correct it on eSERS's website. This gets generated as you run the payroll. So as a side note to this, something I like to recommend, we often have people when they run their SERS per pay report, that's when they find some issues that took place on the payroll. Well, I like to suggest that when you're running your payroll, so you run your payroll and you hit post. This payroll's already posted. You hit post. As soon as that payroll's posted, maybe your next step is to do your email notices and your payments and then your ACHs and all of that. Well, maybe just pause for a minute and go ahead and run your SERS and STRS reports. You don't have to create the submission file, but just come in here, run these reports. This is your STRS report, just to look at it and make sure everything looks good. Because if you find an error at this point, you are still okay to go in and unpost your payroll. So if you were to come in here and you create your STRS report and you're like, oh my God, somebody is way off. I'm missing something, whatever it is. You're still in the, that time frame that you can unpost and fix it rather than having to fix it on your next payroll. So just something to think about. Like I said, you don't have to create your submission file if you don't want to. Just generate the report, look at it, and then go back to your payroll and say, okay, everything looks good. I'm going to process my payments and everything. It's not to say that you're going to catch everything, but you might catch something. All right, so back to my little notes here. You're reviewing your SERS report looking for that number 5. That's what's going to tell you need an adjustment file. And then down here is just kind of the SSDT wiki on how you run it. And I did put in a note here that the adjustments show up on the PDF report. So don't let that confuse you. You'll look at the PDF report and like, oh, everything's on here. Well, if it's got that 5 on there, it's not showing up on your regular submission file. Okay, that's the SERS adjustment file. Any questions on that? Okay. I was checking my notes, make sure I covered everything. Okay, now the fun stuff. Not really. It's the least fun stuff. All right. Employer distribution. Now, this isn't going to be a very, very long, detailed, all in the weeds about employer distribution, because I think everybody has a vague idea of it. But employer distribution says it's the question of, do I want to charge board items to this account? So I'm going to pick on somebody besides my main person here. You're entering their payroll accounts, and it will ask you, is this an employer distribution account? Okay, employer distribution. Here's my question. Yes, this is a regular account. I absolutely want to charge SERS, insurance, Medicare, all of that to this account. Okay, that's what employer distribution means. Do I want to charge board items to this account? Okay. So you say yes, please charge it. Well, when you're processing all of those items, Medicare, insurance, SERS, it always changes the object code. So even though right here, I've got an object code of 111, 111 is a salary code. It will convert this object to a more fitting benefits related account code. So where does it find that? All right. That is found under payroll item configuration. So if I am charging out Medicare, view this, and this looks really stupid, I apologize. This is where you get your object code. Yours will be digits, 3 digits, not weird letters. Sorry about that. But you would have maybe, and I apologize, I don't know, is it to like 249 and 259? So this would be your certified object code, and this is your classified object code. These have probably been set up in your system since the beginning of time. So you probably don't even really think about it anything. They're probably just there and do what they're supposed to do. You can have an other object code that comes into play if you're using a weird salary code that maybe starts with a 4, to know where to charge that out to. So that's where it's finding out how to change that object code. Okay. So I ran a payroll. I ran my payroll, and I'm going to run my pay report. When I look at my pay report, I see on here that 692 had a total of $433.81 that should be charged out for Medicare taxes. All right. So then I go and I'm getting ready to do my employer distribution. So I'm going to run my employer distribution report for my payroll. I only want to do my 692. I'm just going to keep this simple. And I only want to use my employer distribution accounts. I don't want to charge it out to anything that's not employer distribution account. And this is where I don't want to get a whole, like, every district is so unique in how they run this. So if you have specific questions, by all means, let us know. We can talk about that. But for the sake of this presentation, I do want to keep it kind of simple. So I generate my report, and the number I'm looking for is that $433. So I run this, and I'm like, oh man, it's only $396. Why? Why? Who am I missing? Okay, this happens a lot. So I used to have this really crazy way to find who it is, but I recently discovered a report that is a game changer. So you do this and you're like, somebody must not, this usually tells you somebody did not have the, well, I guess this could mean two things. I only wanted to use employer distribution accounts. So that means that somebody was paid and their employer distribution box was not checked, which may be what you want. Um, but in this case, for the sake of sanity, we're just gonna say, oh, we want, everybody should be on here. So there's this fun little report that we can put in your report manager called Employer Distribution Pay Account, Employer Distribution False. Okay, so it's this one right here. And this is a custom report that we would have to load for you. I can download this report. I can put in my pay dates. And when I generate it, it gives me this awesome report that tells me, guess what? All of these people, their employer distribution box was not checked. So if it is, so you can go back in and say, okay, so these are my people that might be missing. So Marvin Malone, he is one of them. And if I go back to my employer distribution, um, Malone is not on here. He's not getting charged out. Um, so let me back up here for a minute. I'm going to decrease this a little bit because it's hurt my eyes. The employer distribution, if you, sorry, I'm like getting like woohoo here. My brain is spinning. So I know that when I ran my payroll, Malone did not have his employer distribution box checked. Okay. I can see here that the account type was regular. So I can actually go back in here. So I'm going to go find his payroll account. Ooh, I didn't clean his up. Sorry, I was cleaning up everybody else. See his active, that's where he was paid from. So 001 1132. All right, so that's where I paid him from. Employer distribution is false. Because it's his regular account, I can actually come in here and say yes and save it. And now, if I rerun my employer distribution report, now Malone is on here. So if it's a situation where it's their regular payroll account and you find it after after the fact that you forgot to check that, you can actually go back in and check it and fix it. However, if it's a specific account that you entered while you were entering payroll, so if you if you were entering a current, or I'm sorry, I'm going to use future pay because it's easier. Um, if you entered a specific pay account down here, you can't fix it at this point. It will not allow you to go in and check the box and fix it. You would just have to fix it over on USAS. Um, so let's talk a little bit about, so regular accounts you can fix, specific you can't. But let's look at Brent here, Mr. Brent Hurst. So I ran this payroll. Sorry, I have a lot of stuff open. I'm trying to like get rid of some stuff that's not helping me. Okay. Um, so, all right. So here's Brent. All right. I paid him, and I paid him from this 001 account. And I can see that my board distribution was no. All right. So and I see this on this report right here. All right. So there's that account code I paid for him. But if you look here, he is still being charged, but to a different account. Here's why. This is how this works. And I'm going to send this to you, but I don't want to read it because you'll hate me for reading it. But SSDT created this awesome little like, if this happens, this is what happens. If you are using the employer distribution account, if you pay them from an account that is not an employer distribution account, okay? So I paid him from an account, but I marked it as not employer distribution, right? I paid him from this account and I said, no, please do not charge board stuff to this account. Well, what it will do is if that happens, it will then go out to their payroll accounts on their position. So I paid him on position 1. It will come out here to payroll accounts, and I should have led with this, and I apologize. And it says, do you have an account that has an employer distribution true? If it does, it will charge to that account. So even though I paid him from this account right here for this payroll, and I said, no, don't charge it to employer distribution, it is then turning around and saying, okay, fine, I'm going to charge all of his employer distribution to this account right here, his active account on that position that has an employer distribution of true. I hope that makes sense. I know I really kind of went around the bend and through the woods and up the creek to get there. And I apologize. This is definitely one of those topics that is not easy, so I apologize. Um, that's how it works. And this little document that I promise I'm going to send to you because I do think it helps. I promise I'm going to find it here. I think it helps explain all of this. Because another thing that I don't want to talk about, because it will get into like account mapping. So if you happen to map that account to be charged to somewhere else, it will look at that. And then there's some setups and system configuration on how that's set up, but that's like really in the weeds and I'm not prepared for that. But what I wanted to get today was how do I find out who was not marked as an employer distribution account? And that is this little report. Now, we have another version of that report that will just tell you how all of their accounts were set up at the time that you processed the payroll. So this was everybody I paid on this payroll, and I can scroll through here and I can say, oh, not employer distribution. And then all of these other people are employer. Okay, here's another one. It's not employer distribution. But Rhonda and I talked about it, and she suggested that creating a report that's specifically for people that did not have that box checked. Did that help at all? Please tell me yes. Please tell me I didn't make you want to run for the hills. For the longest time, what I would do is when people would be like, "Oh, you know, somebody's missing, I don't balance," I would come in here, and some of you are probably on here. I would do the employer distribution. I would run it with the box checked and unchecked, and it does work. And you just kind of have to find out, you know, I would run it in Excel or CSV and then find the differences. What it was a rigmarole, especially for you bigger districts, and it was stupid. But this report I think is awesome. Um, so, and the other thing is that if it was a regular account and you forgot to check the box on their position on their account payroll account screen, you can fix it even though the payroll's already ran and it will charge out correctly. Any questions? No, you're all like,
No.
that was confusing.
No questions in the chat either.
Okay, all right. If you would like those in either of those reports loaded, just let one of us know or put in a ticket and we'll load it for you, even if it's just to have there for the future, just in case. You know, there's a lot of nuances with employer distribution because you can uncheck this box, you can check this box, and you know, it's so unique to every single district that it's hard to kind of do a broad overview without, you know, and answer everybody's questions. Okay. One last thing I want to talk about is just real quick, salary notices. And we are going to do a full training on new contracts and salary notices, probably late April, early May. But so those of you that aren't aware, the USPS now has the ability to email out or just create salary notices. So they can be emailed, or you can just generate them and print them and mail them, or however you want to do that. We can customize these salary notices. So let me just show you. This is what they look like. No, sorry, not that one. That one was special. So this is what they look like out of the system. So as it stands. We can customize these, so we can change the wording. We can add different things. So this one is obviously a per pay, I'm sorry, per year, an annual salary amount. We can customize this to put an hourly amount. You can have two different ones, one for your salary people and one for your, sorry, your hourly people. We can also, with a lot of work, customize it and put it on a letterhead. I will tell you that the letterhead needs to be pretty plain. No footers. We can't do footers. I'll show you. I created one for a district. See if this one works. I've had so many of them. So you can see it's on their cute little letterhead. So when it gets emailed out or printed, whatever, it's already on their letterhead. So we can customize those. So if you look at this, and you can actually, it's in your system already. If you look at this and you're like, I don't like what that says, this is what I want ours to say, go ahead and put in a ticket, because they're a little bit tedious, they take a little bit of time, and we don't want to get into a situation where it's the end of May and we've got 30 districts saying, oh, I want this custom one. And then we can't get to all of them in time for you to get your notices out. So I know it's only March and you don't even want to think about new contracts and salary notices. I get it. But if you could spend 5 minutes to look at it and say, yes, I definitely want to use the salary notices in the program in USPS and I want it to be customized, send it to us. So if you want that, if you want it on letterhead, please send us your letterhead on a Word doc, not a PDF, and then the verbiage. And if you have an example, like this is what they say right now, this is why I want them to say, send them to us. We are limited on what we can post or to you put on it. um, if you go to the SSDT wiki page, which by the way, I'll show you how to get there. If you go to the HCC website, finance, state software redesign, SSDT documentation for USAS and USPSR, you click on USPSR, then it's under, well, you could just type, let's see if this gets me, salary notice. You want to look for USPSR. This one up here says USPS, and that is classic. You don't want to, that's not going to get you anywhere. So right here, new contracts. All right, so this is new contracts, and if I come down here, I got salary notices. Scroll down. These are the fields that we can put onto the salary notices. If you do not see it here, we are not able to add it. If you have a request for a specific field to be added, please let us know. We'll send it to SSDT and maybe we'll get it before salary notices need to go out. But right now, this is where we are limited to. So just want to give an update so everybody has plenty of time to get us that information. So any questions? Was this helpful? I'm going to take by your silence. It was extremely helpful.
We had one comment that, or actually two comments that they really liked them, and I additionally responded, if you need any customization, again, please let us know as soon as possible because you could want one for your contract people, you could want one for your hourly people, and if we need to do two for each district, totally customized, you're talking an awful lot of customization. Yeah. And just giving us heads up as soon as you can, then that means that you're going to be, more in front of that line than someone else who maybe waits till the last minute.
Yeah, so, and you can ask it. Missy's on here, Missy from Claremont County ESC. She was the first one, and it took me forever. We finally got it with the help of SSDT. It's just these, if you saw what we were working with in the background, you'd be like, oh, no wonder. They look so simple when you look at this, but the way these are set up, here, let's just show you guys. Let's just see, so you can see what we're working with. Because it's kind of like, oh my gosh. Oh, I'm not sharing
my
screen.
Word customized forms, yeah.
Yeah, this is just kind of humorous. This is what we're working with when we're creating these. So and honestly, in all, like this part of it, the body is easy. It was getting the header just right, the letterhead. So that's what caused so much struggle for me. But we ended up eventually we got them for that district, and we have two different ones. We have one for the salary people, and we have one for the hourly, and they're happy with how they've turned out. But again, get those to us as soon as you can so we can start working on them, and we will do a full training on contracts and salary notices, probably late April, early May. All right, well, if there is nothing else, I saw some chats come in. Okay, we will post this to our website. I will also send out attendance Oh my God. See, my brain's done. I'm done for the day. Don't call with any questions. I can't function anymore. Your
Pass
attendance
everything to Rhonda,
certificate.
right?
Woohoo! And I even had my good coffee today. All right. I'm gonna stop the recording.